Welcome everyone to the CoinRock Show. We'll get going in a few moments here. We have a guest coming up in about 25 minutes. So let's push this out to the different groups this Tuesday. And we have some bullish price action that so far is looking pretty good. We'll talk about that too, of course. I'm sure you've, if you're here, I'm pretty sure you know that price looking good. Numbers up, which directly correlates to the amount of views we get on all these streams. It's funny. I was talking to other streamers, and everyone notices the same thing, right? Price goes up, views go up. Price goes down, views go down. It's it might actually be one of the only markets that is just so, I'd say, almost obsessed with price. Because you look at stocks, right? If you have like a stock show, like stock picks and stuff like that, which I know that space very well because we've worked for years in that space on the information publishing side. I still have equity in one of those businesses. It really, I mean, there's literally no difference day to day. Your audience is much more long-term, much more predictable in terms of viewership. Crypto, oh my God, if price goes down, everything crashes. So that being said, Bitcoin is at 103K. ETH is at 2,500. We will talk about ETH. You know, I've been an ETH bull for years now, but I've been openly telling you guys that ETH will rip, and it has ripped. It's funny seeing the ETH is so controversial, right? I'm going to share here the let me share my screen here and then we'll get going. Let's push this out to the groups. Welcome everyone just joined, and we'll get going. We have a guest coming up in about 20 minutes. So computer is very slow here. So, I mean, to be fair, it's doing 8,000 things at the same time. So let's let me share this with you guys. All right, screen share. Let's see those bubbles. Let's have a look at the bubbles here. A bit red on the daily, but I'm really not worried at all. Not that I would be worried, but I'm really not concerned at all, just because, let me actually screen share like this. This is better. There you go. Price action has been very, very bullish over the last few days. Welcome to everyone. Welcome. Let me just put you guys on the big screen. Drop a comment, say hi, don't be shy. And then to the team, let me actually give you guys to the team. Let me give you the link here just so I don't forget in 20 minutes. This is the link for the guest. And then, all right, so good. And then I wanna go over a few articles on CoinRock Media. Let's push this out to the groups, please. So we always do like about 20-30 minutes before the, where are we at here? Yep. I actually need to make the window a bit smaller. Before we get the guests on. So today we have one guest joining, and we'll talk about Bitcoin adoption, talk about sovereignty. It'll be, and also the guests that we have today actually built businesses too in fintech, which is interesting because I've invested in several fintech apps in the past, so I know the space pretty well, especially with, hang on, give me just a sec, guys. All right, good. We're looking good. Team, you put the word live twice in that announcement if you want to just remove the word twice live. It's live otherwise. So we have, so fintech. We, as you guys probably know, we did a lot on the paid media side, paid advertising for years. I still do it, but for years I ran an advertising paid media agency, which means basically buying ads for clients. Notice at some point that you make a lot more money not doing it for clients, but doing it for your own brands. And then we moved into acquiring equity and acquiring businesses. That's on the Web2 side. And so while we were running, let's say we, I mean, it was me at the time. We had about 50 employees when it comes to copyright. This is way before ChatGPT. This is between 2015 and 2019. About 50 employees, copywriters, email marketers, media buyers, designers, videographers, so like full-blown marketing agency, advertising and marketing agency. So it was a sizable team when you have to operate but also manage people. I honestly hate managing, so of course we had really good managers, but it takes time, right? 50 people. So we had office space in London, several offices, and it was fine. It was fine. Just I'm segueing into this just to tell you guys that we've done a lot of work for the for fintech. So in the financial space, in terms of acquiring users, app users, newsletter subscribers, and so I'm curious to see to talk about that today if we have time. About Bitcoin, let's see price action here. So a few days ago, let me pull up some articles here on CoinRock Media. We have let me see which ones. I always open like 10 articles, and then we actually go over 2, and because we're out of time. This one is pretty big. Let's have a look. This one, SEC. Let's have a look at this one too. And welcome to everyone who just joined. Share this in the groups. We will be on for about 15-20 minutes, and then we have a guest coming up. So let's have a look. The big headline here, of course, is price going up, right? ETH being bullish. ETH is up like 80% over the last few weeks, over the last 2-3 weeks. Unbelievable. It was, did it drop under 1,500? I think it dropped to 1,400 something. Was it 1,500 something? I honestly don't. And you guys who here, you watch these shows, I don't day trade. I don't look at the charts every day, but yes, when there's big headlines like ETH dropping and dropping and dropping like a stone, I do know that we were either right around 1,500 or it dropped under 1,500, and now it hit 26 or 2,700 over the last couple of days. So it's like everyone now, it's so funny to me. And I'm not the only one, right? But there's a minority of us on crypto Twitter bullish on ETH, and everyone, it was cool to hate on ETH, as if you have to understand something, right? If just because one coin does well, just because one L1 does well, doesn't mean that the others have to die. Solana doing well is great. I'm very bullish on Solana. Doesn't mean that ETH has to die. I think crypto is just way too tribal. It's worse than like fan clubs. This is like, unless if you go to like the ultra like, Argentina football, soccer, for my gringo friends, and you see that the clashes between, opponents and enemy teams almost. It's like sometimes there's so much hatred in this crypto space. It's retarded. Like if one project does well, it doesn't mean that the others suck or that the others have to go to zero. I've been super bullish openly on, of course, Bitcoin, because without Bitcoin, there is no crypto. If Bitcoin drops or if Bitcoin goes to zero, your bags are dead. And ETH, of course, very bullish. Solana, very bullish. And it was funny to see over the last few months, I'd say over the last 6 months, if you look at the chart of ETH dropping and dropping and dropping, how many KOLs and quote experts, pseudo experts, right? And this is all they do, right? This is what the only thing they do in life is just tweet about crypto, which is fine, but it's ridiculous when they can be so wrong about something, and then of course ETH pumps as it was gonna pump. Nothing new. If you've been around for a few cycles, you know that ETH will pump. It will rip. That's just how ETH is, especially when you look at who's buying ETH. And we talk on these streams about how bullish ETH is, and then you see these guys just bear posting and doom posting ETH for months, and now ETH rips, and everyone's like, "Oh my god, yeah, ETH is back." I was always bullish. ETH is no, motherfucker, you weren't. Very funny. So always keep in mind that a lot of the large accounts on Twitter are just honestly clueless. I saw we actually talked about a pretty large firm. Not to I don't think that's. I think name dropping and name and shaming. I don't want to do that, but there's so many very respected Twitter accounts, including research firms, crypto research firms, who literally said a few weeks ago, who went public a few weeks ago saying, it's the bear market, guys. It's over. It's going to be 12 months of like down only. And 4 days ago, oh, bear market's dead. Bear market's over. We're in a bull market again. It's like, dude, like, please, like, stop posting. You're literally hurting your own credibility. So at least have some consistency and believe in something. If you believe this is a bear market and this is just a dead cat bounce or a relief that will then drop, sure, that's fine. At least stick to your guns, right? I've been consistent. I've probably been one of the most consistent voices around me, even like that I know, like in even the marketers that we interact with, friends, KOLs, and I'm not a KOL. But just looking at this and just looking at the market and seeing that, I said this back in November, December, January. I said, and you guys know, short-term bearish. There's nothing exciting. There's nothing to look forward to in crypto. Tariffs, interest rates, debt, blah blah. And it's not just about the fact that the debt is a problem. It's not just about the fact that tariffs are a problem. It's just general sentiment, right? Crypto, and this is like a very like an age-old piece of wisdom actually in crypto. Knowing, keep this in mind, please. Narrative follows price. So when a coin pumps, everyone looks for why, and when a coin drops, everyone looks for why. So you'll notice that stories and reasons and narratives shape follow price. If ETH goes up, like over the last few days, like, oh yeah, this is like because of the Pectra update. It's like maybe maybe, yes, maybe, but maybe ETH was never actually going to die in the first place, and maybe ETH is on its way to 8K, 10K, 12K, 20K. What's funny is like the 10K target for ETH. I don't know why people stop at 10K. I think it's very reasonable to see ETH at 15, 20K. If Bitcoin hits 200, which I think is like, barring a catastrophic event, I think 200K BTC is programmed. Let me just click out of this. I think it's just a matter of time. If you assume, or if you expect Bitcoin to get to mass adoption and to grow as it is, why would ETH being number 2 here for years, battle tested, and surviving every FUD, everything people throw at it, why would ETH disappear? I mean, can Solana overtake ETH? Sure, maybe. Why not? I mean, it's fine. Like, I'm bullish on both. It doesn't need to be one or the other. I think that maxis, I think being a maxi can be very toxic. I think it just really clouds your judgment, and I think you can, you can like steak and chicken. Like it's like you can like ETH and Sol. You can like Bitcoin, ETH and Sol, or whatever. If you're XRP, if you're an XRP, if you're in the XRP army, that's fine too. Just make sure that you understand why you believe in what you believe in. I said this about ETH. We're talking about a lot about ETH today. Welcome to everyone. We have a guest joining in about 10 minutes. So team, I'll go on for about another 8 minutes. Then if you can ping me and let me know if timing wise, if that's okay for you guys, and then we'll do we'll take a short break, a few minutes, and then welcome our guest today. But yes, ETH is very much the story, right? ETH going from 1,500 to 2,600, and again, like I said, I don't know why people think that ETH would stop at 10K. I mean, if Bitcoin hits 200K, 300K, 500K, why would ETH stop at 10K? It's a nice psychological number, right? It's 4x from here. It's ETH at 2,500 now. I think 10K is just a milestone on its way to. I'd be surprised if we see 15, 20K this cycle, just because of the size of ETH, of just how much capital needs to come in. That being said, crazier things happened. Crazier things have happened in crypto. So I just never understood why people were so bearish on ETH long term. Short term, I think the Ethereum Foundation had major issues, like publicly disclosed issues. Key developers leaving and being unhappy with the way things were run. I also think that people either happily ignored or just didn't hear about the changes at the Ethereum Foundation, and that it was very much many on the team, actually, from what you hear in, well, rumors to like offline, even just like, in the meetings that I get to have IRL, it's no secret that the ETH Foundation had severe, like major issues, right, over the last couple of years. Actually, even more. That being said, there's also some very bright people. And so people who actually care about the tech and about what it does and the issues it has. So I again, unless we see something catastrophic, I think ETH hits 10, 15, 20K, no problem. Time frame, I don't know. I mean, I don't think we hit 15. I don't think ETH hits 15, 20K this cycle. Maybe it does. Maybe it rips. But I think 8K is honestly a bearish call if you say ETH at 8K this cycle. And so cycle saying in the next 6 to 12 months, 8K. Yeah, I mean, I think that's like a very reasonable, kind of realistic target. I think low end 6K, all-time highs, I think, are a given. You can go to Google Trends actually and do a keyword search on the amount of searches that Ethereum has had over the last few days. Of course, again, people forget how much of a meme crypto is. Like, you forget about this, your friends forget about this. We have to remember that everything is a meme. I've talked about this very openly, and a lot of high-level people agree to it. Bitcoin became a meme, memed itself into having institutions coming in, memeing itself into becoming digital gold, and it is now viewed and perceived as digital gold. So everything is a meme and can be memed into existence. So brand awareness, of course, with reach, with distribution and channels, right? If you look at if you look at even boomer apps, right? that not the phantoms of the world, just the apps that are not Web3 native, not crypto native, and you look at old school banking apps, if they offer crypto, they offer Bitcoin, and if they offer anything else in Bitcoin, it's going to be ETH, and it's been like that for years. So just the brand awareness, people were all creatures of habit. If you see something 10, 15, 20, 50, 100, 500 times, you're more comfortable than something new coming up. So especially if you're not crypto native, crypto is really split into like the gambling side of things. Think tokens, memes, right? The Ponzi's. That's fine. There's a time and place for that, gambling. And then on the other end, it's the proverbial and the actual institutions, right? The funds, the BlackRocks of the world, and they're not buying, the 800K market cap memes. They're buying Bitcoin, and they're interested in Bitcoin and ETH. That's it. It's usually always it's Bitcoin, and if there's anything else aside from Bitcoin, 9 times out of 10 it's ETH. And we've had guests on the show here, as you guys know, who work directly with institutions, at institutions, who literally service institutions. And they'll say, and they say this every single time, it's Bitcoin and ETH. And if they want to take a bit more risk, they'll try and open like Sol, maybe. That's it. That's it. So the bull case for ETH is extremely strong. Is it going to do a 50x this cycle? No. But I don't know why people are so surprised of seeing ETH rip. It was always going to rip. So, couple headlines here, literally a minute. This is very bullish for the industry. Coinbase joining the S&P 500. This is huge for the industry. This legitimizes crypto. I think that, and again, coming from Web 2 and being very active in Web 2, crypto is not the only industry that's growing. AI, of course, is growing. Web 2 is growing too, keeps growing. But seeing a crypto-first entity, business, being listed in the S&P is great. Very bullish. Whether you love Coinbase or hate them, they've had horrendous customer support. Catastrophic. I don't know what the fuck they're doing on the customer support side. I have a lot of friends who literally got their accounts terminated, going through like this endless loop of KYC requests. And you can find this on Twitter. This is all public domain, in the public domain. I think they need to fix the customer service side of things. But aside from that, Coinbase will be around for years. They are basically the US government's ally in crypto. That's it. Everyone on the institutional side in the US looks at Coinbase and works with Coinbase. Yes, there's other solutions, which I think are great. Kraken is great. Love Kraken. And others, trying to build those bridges and really gain market share, like Robinhood and others, of course. But Coinbase being a crypto native app and business and provider, and seeing it now, seeing the validation here is great. That's probably one of the biggest headlines, I think, when it comes to the traditional side of things in crypto. All right, guys, let's take a short break, literally a few minutes. Let's take a 5-minute break, and then we will be joined by our guest for today. We'll talk. I give you these themes, but sometimes we just go where the conversation takes us. I have a few questions lined up, but honestly, I think I asked like maybe probably one main question, then we just go and vibe. So stay tuned. We'll be back in a few moments, and to the team, we'll be back in 4 or 5 minutes with our special guest today. Talk soon. Hey, Matthias here, and if you're enjoying this and want access to even more alpha, early stage deals and opportunities, and also behind the scenes insights on the markets, hit the link in the description and make sure you're subscribed. It's free and it puts you ahead of the curve. Let's get back to the show. Alex, you're all good. You just have to unmute yourself, I believe.
Good point. Unmuting will help. How you doing, buddy?
Good, man. How's it going?
Good. Just I was at a little midwife meeting. My wife is pregnant, so making
Congrats.
two babies. Yeah, one with the wife and one with the business.
Very cool. Very cool. How far along?
She's about halfway, or just a little bit
Nice.
past.
Very cool.
Repopulate the earth, man.
Yes, that's the I think it's very underrated, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I think, you know, I think when everything's said and done, you know, you build businesses, you make money, you try to make an impact, but ultimately it's what you leave and the next generation. When you read history books, actually let's dive into this.
Let's do
I
it.
definitely want everyone to know what you've done, what you do, but I really believe that, you know, when you study history, it's really about, you know, when you look at those, it's amazing to see those just those family trees and seeing the legacies and what they've built and what they've left and how they've you know, how they've contributed. So what's your view on that, actually, on family?
I think it's incredibly important. I believe that the last 50 to 100 years have brainwashed civilization into thinking that tradition doesn't matter and that the
Yep.
past doesn't matter and that our family trees are worthless and that, you know, we've become ever more rootless. We function a little bit more like pot plants now. You know,
Yep.
we lack the deep roots to not only the sort of the family lineage, but also to the land and to the people, to the ethnos around us. And I think that's been detrimental. You know, there's something to be
I
said
agree.
for traveling the world and for seeing new horizons and all of that sort of stuff. But I think we've shifted society, culture, civilization way too far in that direction, and we've forgotten that, you know, the tree is as healthy as its root system, and
Yep.
we've diminished the importance of that. So, you know, I've been a student of history for a long time. The last book that I just published was a very, very deep historical look at culture and civilization and what we can do for the future in order to bring back the elements of tradition that make sense and intertwine that into what the technological future looks like. So, without getting off on a tangent there, but yeah, that's my thoughts. Extremely important
Yep.
and underappreciated, particularly by our generation, the generation prior.
I agree. I definitely want to get back to that, but before that, I want everyone to know who you are. So first of all, welcome to the show. You
Thank
have
you.
a very interesting background, bio. You've built things, you've done things, and that's exactly what we want to do on the CoinRock Show, is just feature guests and just have interesting conversations with people who have done things and do things actively. You know, I've built many multiple businesses over the last 20 years, bootstrapped. And so when I see writers and authors and entrepreneurs like yourself, it's I know there's a lot of ground and a lot of challenges you've had to overcome through just doing things, and so it
Yeah.
always sets up for a great conversation. So, you know, the floor is yours. Go ahead. Who is Alex?
All right. I'll try and give you the short version. So, it's funny, most people online, on Twitter and all that sort of stuff know me from being an author because I wrote for Bitcoin Magazine for a number of years. And I was the number one Bitcoin writer, actually.
Mm.
I came in early and I kind of built that part of their brand. And around the same time, I had finished up, so I built a Bitcoin exchange over in Australia. And just as I was exiting that company, I really doubled down on writing, and I published a book called the UnCommunist Manifesto with
Yep.
my friend Mark Moss. So that hit the bestseller list, and we ended up on all sorts of crazy podcasts like JP Sears and Jordan Peterson, and the funniest one was we ended up on Alex Jones, which was a
I
classic.
saw
So we
that
did
screenshot.
Infowars
That's funny.
together. So it was a classic. So most people know me from my writing, but my career, I guess, I don't want to use the word career, but my life has always been entrepreneurial. So
Mm.
I studied as a civil engineer. I dropped out of university. I took my scholarship money and I put it on the stock market. Made a bunch of money in 2006, 2007, lost
Nice.
everything end of 2007, 2008, and I ended up starting my 20s about $250,000 in debt. And that was sort of the kickoff of my journey. And $250,000 these days doesn't mean anything, but back then,
It was
2007,
double. It
2008,
literally was
pre-QE,
double.
it
Yeah, it's a lot
I
of
think it
money.
was more than double, man. I don't
More.
know.
Yeah.
Pre-QE, like
Yeah.
back then, 250 meant something. So it was a wild period of life. So that pushed me down to the gold and silver path. So I was a gold and silver bug. I ignored Bitcoin back then. Actually, I'd heard about it along the way. I can't remember if it was like Max Kaiser or whatever, jumping up and down on a couch. But I kind of like, I was a hard money guy. I was like, okay, whatever, internet funny money. And I stuck with my gold and silver. And then I made money back there. It was great. I did really well. That was the best time, I think, to be in gold and silver at that point. I mean, apart from obviously recently.
Yep.
And I used that money to build up some businesses. I built a sales company. I built a solar energy business. I did all sorts of things. Made my first million by the time I was 23. And then by the time I was 24, I was broke again because I had like a bunch of government contracts for the solar panels. And then we had some disputes, and then we didn't get paid by the government. We tried to sue them. Didn't happen. Lost everything. And sort of my life was this sort of like tumultuous, build a bunch of things, lose it, build a bunch of things, lose it, all this sort of stuff. And I ended up, the last business before I got into Bitcoin was hospitality. And that was tough. And I will never, ever, ever, ever do hospitality again. Like the amount
What
of
year was
work,
this?
this was, so I did, I had the cafes between 2012-ish, late 2012, and I sold the last one in 2015.
Okay.
So, and that's when I rolled into Bitcoin again. So I rolled into Bitcoin. I found it. It was right at the time. So I just like wound that down. I did try and launch a startup around recruitment. So we were trying to build like personality profiles, and we built like a Tinder for jobs.
Yep.
And if you're the employer, you didn't do a job ad anymore. What you did was you described your ideal candidate, persona, profile, skills, personality. And on the other side, we had candidates go through these personality profiling tests and skills assessments and everything.
Yep.
And there was no job ads. We would just match the two together. And then if they both swipe right, they could talk. So it was a really, really cool sort of concept.
It's actually worked very well since. I mean, there's a bunch of those that have raised since. I think you were almost too early to that.
We were way too early. We were way too early. I was too young. I was too stupid. I didn't understand how much money it took to build a two-sided marketplace, like all that sort of stuff. Like we raised $300,000, which to us was like big money. And it was nothing, obviously. So yeah, it was around the time that had failed, and then I'd sold my last cafe and sort of got out of that business, and I was looking at what to do, and then I stumbled down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, found something, and then I built Australia's, I think, still probably most popular Bitcoin app. It's called Amber, and it's still running there. I exited that in late 2021, early 2022 because I had some disagreements with how the government wanted to do things in that country.
Yep.
Without getting into the details there, I left, and that's when I hit the author roadshow. I wrote 2 books, and now I'm back building again. And now I'm building kind of like a social network for expats, nomads, and what I like to think of as sovereign individuals.
Yep. Very cool. I mean, there's a lot of, we could talk for hours. There's so many different topics we could take this conversation. One thing I will say, there's a few things I want to get back to. One is, I am a what you would call a quote self-made entrepreneur. Of course, there's no such thing as self-made, but it's the best way to describe it. I didn't go to business school. I dropped out after 3 months of uni. School was very easy to me. I don't say it to brag. It's just like you're given tools and you use them. And I was just lucky. I learned extremely quickly. University in Switzerland. This is after I retired from pro tennis on injury. University in Switzerland is very rigid. So, I remember going to one of the professors and saying, hey, if you give me all the books, I will study everything. In 2 months, I'll do 12 months of work in 1 to 2 months, and then I can come back, take the test. In Switzerland is very, old school. And so, he didn't even understand what I meant. He was like, no, you have to come to my class. I have to put you a check mark next to your name. So like, okay, this is not for me. Long story short, going down so really going into entrepreneurship, one thing I say is you connect differently with people who have either lost everything at least once or come close to losing everything once, because that's the ultimate. First of all, in entrepreneurship, everyone who's succeeded, you only see the glamour and the glitz, right? You never see the pain and the losses and the and what you went through with the government contracts and chasing money. It's something that no one will ever understand aside from entrepreneurs who have put months, years of work, counting on future money, betting on yourself, and then losing everything. It just makes you question who you are, what you're made of, and it makes you question if you're made for entrepreneurship. So my first question, I mean, this is more of it's actually, this is I can feel a very good vibe in this show. How did you feel? How did you feel as a person when you faced, because you had two major losses, right? The first one after the 250, and then the second one after the government contracts.
Man, it's I love the question, and it's funny. You and I are very similar in that sense, because I too at school was I excelled. I never went to class. The teachers didn't know what to do with me. I did the same thing in my physics thing as well. The whole class selected one elective, and I was like, I'm not doing that elective. It's crap. Everyone selected it because it was the easy one, and I was like, no, I want to do quantum mechanics. And they're like, it's the hard one. I was like, I don't give a shit. So I just took the books and I did it myself, and I aced everything. So I really resonate with you on that. How did I feel? Man, it's been a long time. So it's been 20 years since then. So the first time I felt numb. It was funny. I had been like, I took, my scholarship was small. It was $3,000, and I built that 3,000 meticulously. I built it up to about $60,000. So from a percentage standpoint, that's a massive gain. Insane, right? But I was young and stupid. I was trading like options and warrants, and like I was swing trading and all this thing. And I thought, you know what? I figured it out. I'm going to be the greatest trader in the world. And I put my little spreadsheet, and I had this like projections, and I was like, man, in a couple of years, I'm going to be a billionaire. I'm going to buy this whole country, all this sort of stuff. Right.
Yeah.
And then I remember it was a week before my birthday, a week before I think it was my 20th, 2007, week before my 20th birthday. And I had I went all in. I put my entire 60K onto this one position, which I was certain. I was like, okay, this is going to break through. And it was a triple bottom or whatever it was. And I was like, this is going to fucking bounce. I'm going to rip. And like, my goal was to become the millionaire by 20, right? That was like this number in my head. And I wouldn't have made $1 million, but I probably would have made $250,000 on that trade.
Yep.
If it went right. And, I thought, okay, well, look, I can still say $250,000 and I'm 20 and I'm on the way. But yeah, man, August 16, I can't remember now if it was Bear Stearns or Lehman Brothers or someone went bust, and it just wiped that position. Like, I think the stock crashed 60%. My options that I had levered up were down 90%, 99%. I just remember like turning the computer on and just like clicking the refresh button. Like, what the hell's going on here? Why is everything red? What's going on? And I was like, I got up and I was like, what the fuck? I walked there and I kicked the hole in my kitchen. I was like, shit, now I got to fix that. And it was like it was a moment of reckoning, because I was like, what was I doing? And then what got worse then was I ended up borrowing more money, and I kept digging the hole deeper. I kept doubling down. And that sort of meme, it's like, it's the dip, and then there's another shooter. It's the dip. No, this is the dip. And sort of kept going back. So the dip just kept going. And I was like right in the midst of 2008. I had no concept of what was going on. And man, I burnt through 250K, and I was distraught. And the only thing I could do at that time was I had to leave university, because I had what was it, like $2,000 worth of bank repayments to make every month before I could even eat. So I left university, and I got the only job I could get on short notice, which was door-to-door sales, commission only. And I was an introvert, so I don't know if you sort of share this as well. But when I was young, I was very introverted. I was like a
Yep.
nerd, and that's like I couldn't talk to people, and that's the only thing I could get on short notice. And I had to become the best salesperson in the room because I
Yeah,
had to eat.
you forced. Oh yeah.
Yeah,
Oh yeah.
and yeah, man, like it was this period of like questioning reality, questioning myself, questioning how stupid I was. I was like, how did I like? I thought I was smart. Like, was it luck? Was it what was it? And all this sort of stuff. And yeah, and you know, slowly made my way back, built that other business, and then when I lost everything there again, it was the same thing. I actually at that point, so without getting too deep in the story, but I had this successful solar company. We're doing really well. I started building a gym, and I started importing LEDs from China because I was like,
Yep.
LEDs is going to be the next big thing. And around the time when the solar company collapsed, like the gym was half built, and I had a
Mm,
deposit of 150 grand worth of LEDs in China for a container, which I couldn't then fulfill. So I lost my deposit. The gym was half built. The solar company collapsed. Like everything caved in on top of me. And it was one of those other moments I just said, screw this. I'm just going to become a hippie. I sold whatever else I had left. I still had like some gold and silver, so I still had some money, but I just like wound everything up,
yep.
paid everyone out, all my stuff, closed the business, closed everything, and then I became a vegan and I moved to Bali. That was like my thing. And anyway,
What
obviously
did
I
you
didn't
learn
stay there.
from that from those two experiences with the second one?
I think the biggest thing, and I watched the founder, the movie with
Mm,
Michael Keaton
Michael
about Ray
Keaton. Yeah, yeah.
Kroc, yeah,
Great movie.
the other day, and he was listening to this. I can't remember. It was Brian Tracy, whatever. It was like some personal development thing
Yep.
record while he was in his hotel room, and it said, you know, talent. What will make you win? It's not talent. It's not skill. It's not this. It's not that. It's perseverance. And I think that's what those experiences taught me is like the ability to endure
Yep.
and persevere and persist through pain, through adversity, through shit not going your way, through people telling you no, to like unfair things happening, like that you see that are like fundamentally, it's like, wait a minute, this is wrong. Like,
Yep.
there's a contract here, we're supposed to be paid, and you're just like not paying me. So all of that stuff, I think, taught me. And this isn't like an intellectual lesson. I think, you know, there's many intellectual lessons that you can get in life, but I think what these experiences taught me is like the visceral lesson of withstanding pain
Yep.
and continuing forward. And that fortitude, I think, is very rare in the world. Most people
Yep.
give up at the first sign of pain. And
I agree. I talk
yeah, that would
about
be
this
my
with
answer.
I have quite a few. No, go ahead.
No, I said that would be my answer to you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. You know what's interesting is this is going to sound like we're very old, but the next generation, the new generation, is really struggles with major challenges, right? And I talk
Mm-hmm.
about this. I have quite a few friends still, professional athletes in different sports, uh, several of which went to the Olympics several times. So some of the best athletes in the world in tennis and other sports. And it's funny because my generation, so like very late 30s, right? If you look at athletes today, 20, 25 years old, the resolve they have is very different to my generation. And I'm sure if you look at the athletes who are 50 years old, 50 plus, they'll say the same thing about our generation. But I will say that because the world has changed so much fundamentally in the last 15 years with apps and the ease of service, access, delivery, it just makes, I'm sure you've seen that meme of like, easy times create weak men, that whole thing,
And there's a
right?
whole chapter in my book on that. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, I definitely want to talk about that. And athletes today, and we talk about this all the time with, us like retired athletes. It's like, if you put us now today in a 15-year-old body again today with our mindset of the pain that we were trained to endure, nothing exceptional back in the day, but like today, if you look at like the juniors, right? If you look at like the most talented athletes, 15, 16, 18, 20 years old, they very skilled, very technical, crumble at the first sign of difficulty. It's amazing. And so, whereas before it was mentally much more like the level, the it's a paradox, because now we know much more about peak performance, but the resolve is very different. So I think that, coming back to your answer about being able to cope and take on pain and adjust and go through it, through against the pain, and embrace the pain, is something that I think this generation has lost.
It has, although there is, I think there's some hope, because I've met, I don't know if it's, I mean, you would know more in the sports. I don't know if it's exactly the current generation that's coming up, or if it was the generation just after us. That I feel like the generation just after us, that are like 10, 15, 20 years younger, so kind of like born in late 90s, for example, or early 2000s, those ones I think have shown some of this weakness. But I'm noticing that there's the younger generation, the newer generation, seem to be showing a different resolve. At least I've noticed like some exceptional young people that I'm impressed by. It's almost like the generation skips.
Yep. Yeah.
Like, and I think that's a thing, because the generation before us was the freaking boomers or whatever. And, we all know what they did. And then the generation, sort of, we kind of align with the one before that. So I don't know, but it's a tricky one, because it is fundamentally tied to our perception, both of, like, we've optimized civilization for two things, for safety and for comfort, right?
Yeah.
And when you optimize civilization for safety, comfort, I would say also a third thing, equality. All of those things, while they might feel fluffy and nice, they don't create strength. You can't get strength from safety. You can't get strength from comfort, and you can't get excellence from equality. In fact, equality is the diametrically opposed to excellence. And I've been banging on this drum for a long time. I've been called a fascist and everything, because I say, like, the biggest thing that is lacking in civilization today is the desire for excellence. And excellence is not kind. Excellence actually, by definition, means you leave some people behind. And it's not all warm and fluffy, but that's the fucking point. Like, if you want to reach, like, the word exceller, like the etymological basis of the word means to climb a mountain. People don't understand this. Like, we created these words because of their fundamental meaning. And to be excellent means to separate yourself from the plain and to enter the mountain, to climb a height. And when you want to make everything all, like, I guess you and I are similar age. Like, when I was in school, they started introducing participation awards. Like, that was the cancer that started entering, right? So it's like, it's you get an award not because you're good or great or you did something good. It's like because you participated. What the fuck was that? So that is the shit that started to decay civilization.
Yep, I agree. What's funny about being called like a fascist? I have the same thing. The thing with pro sports, what it teaches you is being professional from being not even a teenager, right? Age 8, you're competing on the weekends, and there's one winner in tennis. There's no draw. It's like there's 64 kids, one winner. Everyone is sad except one kid that weekend at age 8. So, and so it definitely wires your brain, like literally has an effect on how your brain is structured, right? If you grew up with that versus growing up today in a world, especially a few years ago, where everything is, there's no competition, there's no ranking,
everyone can win, whatever.
And life is tough if you go through that, and that's what you've been given and shown for in your formative years. Life will destroy you if you can't. I agree with that, but it's been a very unpopular topic in the last few years, talking about winning and excellence. It's almost like you have to tiptoe around it, or you have to be very loud and say, fuck it, this is what I think, and this is how it is.
I took the latter route, sometimes to my own detriment.
Oh, I've lost several very close, like, childhood friends, just because someone very liberal, and that's a whole separate conversation of people going the other extreme, right? Let's call it like the extreme Democrat, left leaning. And you and I think we have very similar views. Just be having common sense. This is not about
having
fashion.
Life experience, man. Exactly. Do you know what it is? Like, I say this to everyone, everything sounds nice on paper, theoretically speaking, but then life teaches you another reality. Like
Yep.
you can only be, I say this to everyone, is like, you can only be a leftist in theory.
Yep.
Like, and that's why I love those videos where, you know, you've got these people like marching for like, oh, immigration, all this sort of stuff, and the dude comes is like, okay, we've got like 10 people, we need them to stay in your house, is that okay? It's like, oh, no,
Yeah,
not
yeah,
my
yeah.
house, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like,
Oh, yeah.
reality is like reality is right wing, and like
Yeah.
theory is left wing. And it's like,
Yeah.
once you become an adult, like the definition of becoming an adult is realizing that reality is reality, and you have
Yep.
to adapt to it. Like, if you want to live in a fucking fantasy land, go and like be a communist. Like,
Yep.
it's, yeah.
You know what's funny? So my dad grew up literally in communism, born in the 50s in Poland.
Mhm.
You know, my granddad literally fought Nazis. Like you know, he has an amazing story documented. We have the archives, and you know, he was one of those like tough men in World War II, and he had to go and defend Poland, and he literally built some of the militias that fought against the Nazis and bombed Nazi convoys. Like the movies that you see, that's what they did. It's an unbelievable story. But this was like their day-to-day life. Nothing exceptional at the time. This was what you were supposed and expected to do.
Mhm.
What's interesting is growing up in communism, like for people who grew up in communism, everyone left. My dad says, he says, no one went east when they torn down the wall. No one
Totally.
went east. They all went west. And simple as that. And the other thing I want to say, and then I want to get to your book, is I saw a study. I'm sure you saw the study too a few months ago, actually, this was around the Trump election. And there was a survey, and this is not actually, I don't think it's a poll. I think this was an assessment based on happiness, and the most unhappy demographic in today's world is the under 25-year-old
White
female
women.
demographic.
Yeah. It's particularly white women as well. Yeah.
Correct. And so I think what's interesting is with them now graduating 20, 25 years old, and now having to pay taxes, and understanding that I'm going to have to fight to get a job. I'm going to have to fight to find a house. The idea of this left-wing propaganda they've been fed is going to be very difficult to get over for them.
It's extremely sad. We turned women, who are the most precious creatures on the
Yep.
planet that give life, we turned them into wage slaves. We brainwashed them to become wage slaves so that they could work their fertile years away so that they could pay taxes to a government that hates them.
Yeah.
Congratulations. What a backward civilization.
Yeah, and it all, you know, also and something that you notice is the unhappiness, like the grumpiness, the anger. And it wasn't like that forget about 50 years ago. It wasn't like that 10, 15 years ago. It's changed so much. I'm curious to hear more about your book. So first of all, what made you want to write it? Because you come from business, of course. You have a very interesting path. What made you want to write a book?
So as I said, I was doing a lot of writing for Bitcoin Magazine, and my takes on Bitcoin have always been sort of like philosophy slash history slash politics and civilization. Like, they've always sort of been grand ideas. And are you familiar with Robert Breedlove?
Yes.
So Robert Breedlove and I kind of like, we sort of got into the game around similar time, and he and I were sort of the guys, you know, writing this kind of stuff, and we kind of like changed the discourse around Bitcoin, and we went off in slightly different directions. Yeah.
I've
So
seen the
you know,
YouTube.
I went ultra anti-COVID, and like I went ultra sort of that way, and he sort of remained very, very poised and very philosophy, and sort of like that did very well for him. And, you know, I sort of became a little bit of a social pariah because I was just raging against the machine. But I did a lot of that writing, and when I stepped down as CEO from Amber, I remember taking some time to think, okay, what do I want to do next? And the first book that I published, so the UnCommunist Manifesto, I was with Mark Moss. We were in El Salvador in June of 2021, I believe it was. It was right before the Bitcoin law came into effect, and we were just
Yep.
like sitting there having lunch in El Zonte. And he asked me a question. He's like, Svetski, he's like, have you ever read the Communist Manifesto? And I looked at him and I said, why the hell would I do that? And he's like, he goes, it's really bad. And I said, I'm sure it is, man. I said, I don't want to give myself brain cancer, you know? So he's like, you know what? Someone should like write a, no, before I said that, he said, did you know it was like one of the most read political science and economics books in universities today? I was like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
And he said, someone should write something short that sort of like, you know, rebuts it and flips it on its head. I was like, oh yeah, cool idea. So 6 or 7 months later, I'm in Austin and I had just like finished up with Amber and all this stuff. And I'm just sitting there thinking, man, maybe we should write a book. So I called Mark up and I said, hey, what are you doing? I said, oh, I'm on holidays for a couple of weeks, nothing much on the schedule. I said, fly to Austin, let's lock ourselves in a room and let's write a book. And we flew in. We had no idea what we're going to call it. Like we were thinking, you know, the Libertarian Manifesto, the Individualist Manifesto. Like we're kind of throwing around names. And we started writing it. Initially, it was a bit of a rebuttal, but you know, the book evolved into becoming its own sort of standalone thing. And we were having dinner, and Mark's wife was there, and she said, like, we were throwing the names around, like, oh, we don't like that, don't like this, don't like that. And she's like, why don't you call it the UnCommunist Manifesto? And we looked at each other, we're like, shit, that's a great name. So we picked that and we rolled with it and we polished up the book, etc. And it just like hit a chord. It was the right book at the right time.
I'm on the Amazon page. I think, you know, I love books. I think, you know, I think I always support authors. I've written several books myself. I think everyone should check out your book and go buy it. I understand why people don't read more. And actually, you have the audiobook too. So no, go ahead, please continue.
Thank you. So yeah, man. So that was the story of that one, and we published that. It did well, as I said. You know, did the whole tour and everything. And then for the next 2 years, I wanted to sink my teeth into something bigger. I was like, okay, look, I want to write a book of my own. And I've always been very fascinated. Like the first book I was given by my uncle was Demosthenes' speeches against Philip II of Macedon, so Alexander the Great's father.
Wow,
these speeches were, you know, these eloquent speeches, because Demosthenes was sort of like the Greek political hero at the time, and he hated Philip because Philip brought what was like a ragtag band of like mountain chieftains who were the Macedonians at the time. He sort of brought them together and he built the kingdom of Macedonia into like one of the most formidable armies of that period. Like prior to that, it was the Athenians and the Spartans and the Thebans. So, you know, I was reading all of this stuff when I was young, and I was always interested in sort of the great men of history, the warriors who transformed civilization. And I set out to write this book. So the latest book is called The Bushido of Bitcoin. And in 2020, 2021, I had read Shogun by James Clavell, which is one of my favorite books, and it's set in the Japanese Warring States period, just before the War of Sekigahara, where Tokugawa Ieyasu he unites Japan for the first time. And it's an incredible story. And I was reading Shogun right in the middle of COVID. So I'm transported 400 years back in time, you know, to this age where, you know, if you said something like slightly insulting to your lord, you would commit seppuku, like you would like cut your fucking bowels out and commit suicide. And then I walk out on the street and I see people wearing masks in the middle of the street. I was like, God help me, how weak has civilization become, right? So it was a really like defining moment for me. And I wanted to weave these sort of principles that I had picked up from Japanese history and ancient Macedonian, Greek, Roman history, and the Christian West and all this sort of stuff. And I asked myself the question, I said, and this is the premise of the new book, I said, what happens when Bitcoiners, who are going to be the ones that inherit all of the money, like I don't think people realize that Bitcoin is going to be the reserve currency. And what that means is that everything on the planet will in some way be priced in Bitcoin. So like 21 million Bitcoin as the underlying price of everything. One Bitcoin will be enough to buy, I don't know, half of New York City. Like it's like we're talking in the billions and the billions and the billions of, purchasing power per Bitcoin. So in the coming 5 or 10 years, we're going to see Bitcoin appreciate significantly. What happens to those people now that they have more money? Will they have more power? Do they have the character to bear the responsibility of that power? And by my analysis is I don't think so. I think most people in the modern age who come of money in a short period of time, they are crushed by that burden. They become degenerates. That's why you see them all driving around Lambos, become degenerates, like cocaine addicts, this, that, shit coining, all this kind of stuff that goes on. So my book was, I said, okay, if we want to build an ascendant civilization, we need to start with the culture. And what kind of culture precedes the great civilizations? And that's where I said, okay, well, let's look at the great cultures of the past. So I looked at the Japanese and the samurai and Bushido meaning way of the warrior. I looked at chivalry. I looked at Rome. I looked at Macedonia. And I found these overlaps in terms of how the cultures were structured and these codes of virtue that emanated from the warrior class and the nobility. So the book is basically a study of that. It's like, okay, what are the great virtues? How do we structure civilization? I go through 10 virtues in the book. Then I ask a bunch of other, really heavy questions around like governance and civilization and culture and wealth. Does wealth corrupt? Are we doomed to go through that cycle, weak men, strong men, et cetera, like, or can we buck that cycle somehow? I look at the practices, like how do we bring traditional rituals back? How do we make our children comfortable and able to endure pain and persevere again? Like, how do we bring these? Because, in the ancient days, like, for example, with the Spartans, you had the agogi, right? So you had the young, noble children get taken from their families, taken from their mothers at the age of 7, and they have to grow up in the wild. And that was the becoming a man process. We don't have these rites of passage anymore. So I look at that, and then I look at a vision for the future. Is like, how do we take all of these lessons, these principles, these potential paradoxes, and how do we work with that to build an ascendant future? So it's a way bigger book. It took me 2.5 years of research and writing, but got it done in the end. And it's it's bloody 550-page monster.
I have it open here. We'll link everything. This is the Bushido of Bitcoin, a code of virtue for a world on a new economic standard. Talking about big books and history, I literally just finished a few days ago the Iliad a few weeks ago and the Odyssey.
Incredible.
Both.
Incredible.
And
Incredible.
my God, I mean, I not that I didn't know the just the general story. I love history. Like, that's literally one of the first things one of my top. I enjoyed studying history. For me, it was like reading stories. So
exactly, yeah.
Going to see ruins, like wherever we go with my wife, I'm like, are there any ruins? Can we go? I love history, and so we've been to all the main sites around the Mediterranean, and so you definitely, and Chris Nolan is actually they're shooting the Odyssey right now. So if there's ever a time to actually read about the story, it's now before the movie comes out in like 2 years. It's just this basic principles that seem so extreme today that were common sense and day to day back in the day.
Exactly. And the thing is, these resonate with us because we have it. And I'm a firm believer of what I like to call blood memory. I was having a conversation with someone on Twitter the other day. He was saying, why is it that people resonate more with narrative than with like, abstract data? And me these days, like, I do not read nonfiction anymore. Like, or sorry, like, let me rephrase that. I don't read books on abstract philosophy anymore. If I want to learn something about something, I will do history or I'll do historic fiction, one of those two. Because we are wired for narrative, and I believe we're wired for narrative because of blood memory. There's probably only 10 lessons in life and 10 lessons in the world. And those 10 lessons are encoded in these stories. So when we go back and read the Iliad or the Odyssey or Bhagavad Gita or, any of these ancient stories, they resonate with us because we know them inside. Like they're in our blood, they're in our bones, they're in our DNA. And sort of modern civilization has tried to kind of like brainwash us out of that. It's like, oh yeah, you know, everyone is the same, men are women, women are men, black is white, white is black, up is down, sort of like confuse us out of this. But then we kind of read these ancient stories and we're like, wait a minute, that makes sense. And you don't know why it makes sense, because society around you doesn't tell you that it makes sense, but something inside you knows that it makes sense, and you start to live in accordance with that. And there's a different energy inside you. So anyway, I'll shut up there for a second because I'm gonna go off on a bloody tangent. But it's yeah, history, stories, very powerful.
Yeah, you know what's funny is so between 2008 2010 I lived in LA. So I went on to visit a friend for what was supposed to be 2 weeks, and I ended up staying 2 years. And he was a producer. You know, the story when you're in LA is like everyone is a producer, but he actually produced. He was nominated for an Emmy, produced shows, TV, mainly TV, but real shows. And his movie got nominated. It was Matthew Perry was the star of that show, of the movie that he wrote. And so through that relationship, very good friend, I met dozens of real producers, Warner Brothers producers. Like, I don't name drop them, but they've made some of the biggest franchises that everyone knows. And so what's interesting is when you're talking about stories, because that's all they talk about, by the way, it's just stories. That's all they do, right? Movies or stories. It's always the same stories. It's the same stories that you find in the Odyssey, the Iliad, the Bible. It's the same story with the newest and hottest actor, actress in a new setting, but the actual lesson of the movie, the arc, is always the same. And you study this a lot in marketing. I'm sorry, The Hero's Journey. That's exactly the book I was going to say. That's
Campbell.
Everyone studied that in marketing, and there's only 10, 11 stories, and that's it. And everything that we've seen that you encounter as a human being will fit into one of those journeys.
100%.
What interests you? Because you have this really interesting it's almost like a paradox, right? Like this old school philosophy of like studying these old civilizations, and also Bitcoin, right? The other extreme. What do you, in today's, like, if we talk about like modern stuff, Bitcoin, crypto, what gets your attention and interest?
I mean, for me, I'm very, like, crypto actually doesn't capture my interest at all. Honestly, I think a lot of the crypto stuff is the attempt to take the genius that is in Bitcoin and apply it in places where it doesn't fit. And that's, to me, basically my personal summary of a lot of crypto stuff. Like, we have a massive problem. Civilization has a huge problem with money, and money is the most important tool for human competition, cooperation, and trade, which you cannot have a civilization without the economic plumbing. And the economic plumbing is as good as the money that is being used. So if you have a money that is extremely leaky, which is the way I understand fiat. Fiat is an extremely leaky form of money, which means that you produce it very easily, so it doesn't tether to reality in any way. But to make fiat work, you need all of this bureaucracy, all of this control, all of this stupidity around it, which means it's extremely costly for it to function. But at the same time, it's paradoxically easy because you can just click a button and print a bunch of it. So what that does to civilization is it distorts the pricing and valuation mechanisms of everything. We can't price or value anything properly. Like, it's impossible for, speaking of the Ray Kroc movie that we just mentioned earlier, like, I remember just graphically in the movie, he goes up to the counter and he orders a burger, a shake, and fries for 35 cents. 35 cents. And someone's got to tell me that today, 60 or 70 years later, with worse ingredients, the Big Mac, fries, and shake costs 20 times as much.
Almost 100 times, $35.
Oh yeah, touche. Yeah, exactly. It must be even more. Exactly. So
Crazy.
so there's something wrong there. So that tells you
Yeah.
that there's something fundamentally wrong with the capacity for civilization to measure its progress. If something gets better,
Mm.
it gets cheaper. Simple as that. So
Yep.
to me, I think Bitcoin is an incredible innovation in that sense, because it's this extremely cumbersome, slow, retarded way to do a database, basically.
Yep.
But it delivers on the promise, which is an unchangeable monetary promise. And
Yep.
that's what we need. Like, we don't need to change and this and that. It's like, so Bitcoin's beauty is in the fact that it is both digital and unchanging. So to me, it's actually, I feel like it's almost maybe this is why I love it so much. It's, you said that I'm this paradox of like someone who loves the past and the future. Like, Bitcoin is almost like that. It's very akin to the past, which is like gold. It's like Bitcoin's like an element,
Yep.
but it's also digital. So it's like it's internet native, and it's like it's futuristic, and you can build layers on it and all this sort of stuff. So it kind of like reaches back and it reaches forward. And I think
Yep.
to me that's very interesting. So beyond Bitcoin, the other thing that I find very, very interesting today, and I've been tinkering it for a while, is this idea of identity in a key pair. So
Mm.
we own, I mean, if you self custody your Bitcoin, at least, like,
Yep.
your Bitcoin is a bearer instrument,
Yep.
and it's a digital bearer instrument, which is very interesting, right? That's extremely powerful. Identity, up until now, basically, like, has always been a feature inside somebody else's app. So when you have an
Yep.
account, whether it's with Facebook, Instagram, your bank, Uber, it doesn't matter what, like, your identity is a feature inside someone else's app. It's not your identity. So you've got
Yep.
this kind of like digital proxy. For the first time now, and I think Bitcoin kind of opened the door to this, is we have the ability to, have a key pair as an identity. So you have a private key and a public key is your sort of your public facing identity. And there's a bunch of different protocols. The one that I'm most interested in at the moment that seems to have taken off is one called Nostr, Nostr,
Yep.
stands for notes and other stuff transmitted over relays. And if this works and it becomes another layer on top of the internet where you've got kind of like, TCP, IP, HTTP, that's sort of the current structure of the internet. If we
Yep.
can somehow successfully add another protocol where our identity is decoupled from the applications, I believe the applications that are going to be built on top of that are going to be unlike anything we've seen before. Like, the current
Mm.
internet stack gave us everything from Google to Amazon to Uber to internet banking to everything. But now with an identity layer on top, and I guess you could also argue that Bitcoin is a monetary layer because Bitcoin's also a protocol. So if you have this kind of like, we go from a 4-layer internet to a 6-layer internet, I think
Yep.
that becomes extremely interesting, and the design space for applications will change. And then I guess you sort of wrap some AI stuff in there, language models, this and that. Like, you start to, the world starts to look very, very interesting. And I think that the last point I'll make here is, I believe we're going to see like a bifurcation. We're going to have this kind of sovereign stack developing on the internet where people own their money, they own their identity, they sort of potentially own some element of their data, etc. So it's much more like owned and sovereign. And on the
Yep.
other side, you're going to have the rise of CBDCs, walled gardens, gated internet, hyper, like, if you say something, you get banned or whatever, like, or, what's going on in Europe, etc. So it's like you're going to have these kind of like two internets and two monies and two systems.
Yep.
And I really believe it's incumbent on people to think now which one they want to be a part of. Like, and to
You
me,
think they'll have
the
a
other one is
choice?
very exciting.
Do you think they'll have a choice?
Everyone has a choice. It's just, the thing is, your choice diminishes the longer you leave it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
Everyone has a choice right now to buy Bitcoin.
Yep.
Like, there's kids in Africa with no bloody, that have a fraction of the choice that you and I have, and they have Bitcoin. So, anyone telling me in America or the West or anything like that, so, oh, I don't have a choice about Bitcoin. No, yes, you do, bro. Just shut up and read some books, figure it out, and you'll get it. But people just don't find it important enough. And that's always the case with,
Yep. Yep.
lazy people, is like, It's not important until it's important. And then when it's important, it's too late.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. We have about 10 minutes left. I'd love to talk about what you're building now on the app side, or anything else that you want to discuss. Maybe let's go into the app first, and then anything for the last 1 or 2 questions, anything you want to plug or go over.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah. So let me ask you a question. So
Yep.
when you travel, how do you figure out like what places to go, what to do, like whether it's a restaurant or you want to hit a gym or something, you want to get a massage, or like you want to go to an event or something like that? Like what do you do?
I mean, usually things to do in, right? Or current things to, or events in XYZ city, things to do in, or popular landmarks in XYZ city. And Google Maps, pretty much, just
Google
to,
Maps. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So do you also sort of like leverage people, like someone in a city and be like, hey dude, what's the best cafe to go to, or something like that?
Yeah, sometimes for sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for me, that
I mean,
experience
depending
kind
on
of like,
sometimes if I know someone in the city, of
if
course. If not,
yeah, exactly. So it needs to be like a trusted kind of
Yeah.
recommendation, right?
Yeah.
So for me, this is something I've noticed because I spent some time being a nomad and traveling the world and doing all this sort of stuff, right? And I've noticed two big trends that have happened is like the travel, eating, socializing, and events have become a very social activity. But at the same time, every travel application in the world is still static. Like if you and I both go to a new city and we both open up Google, we could be completely different people. Now, you and I are probably similar, but let's say you're a vegan and I'm a carnivore, for example.
Yep.
We see the exact same thing, whether it's TripAdvisor, whether it's Google, whether it's Yelp, whether it's whatever, we see the same shit. But the world has become like dynamic, and like we all have different preferences, and we're used to these sort of social feeds like Instagram and everything like that being tailored to us. So I've been sitting here looking at this and I thought, man, is there a way to make the travel and lifestyle experience more dynamic? So what we're working on at Satlantis, so this is the new app, is I'm leveraging what I mentioned before, Nostr. Nostr is because it's an identity layer, it actually functions as a open social graph. So there's a social graph there that I can tap into and I can see who's connected to who and what, etc. And there's interests and people engaging with content and all this sort of stuff. I can build a context layer on top of that. And this context layer can have everything from locations to restaurants, cafes, gyms, like what I call merchants or places. You can have events on there. You can have all this sort of stuff on there and build it in such a way that when you sign up to the app, you input your interests, you find people that are like you, and, you find your friends in the same way as you would do with like Instagram or Facebook. And you build your social graph, you engage with whatever content you want to engage with, you save your favorite restaurants, etc. And then let's say you go to a new city. When you land in the new city, the app should be able to serve you like a feed of the best restaurants or cafes or experiences or sightseeing or events or anything that is tailored to you based on a mixture of your social graph, your interests, and what you've bookmarked or saved or curated for yourself before. So all of a sudden, the experience for all of us becomes different. So this is sort of like the big idea that I have is like, can I blend the dynamism and personalization of social with the utility of travel? Because, currently, while social media apps like Instagram and all this sort of stuff, they're great for content, they're not built for like bookmarking this place. Like Google is very good for bookmarking a place, but Google doesn't have the social element, right? So it's kind of like there's something in the middle that's missing. And I'm working really, really, really hard to try and like blend the two. And it's funny, as I've been going down this rabbit hole, I remembered, and let's see if you remember this app. Do you remember Foursquare?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people on this won't even know what Foursquare is. Yeah.
Dude, Foursquare was the OG attempt at building this.
Yes. Yeah.
And my theory as to why Foursquare failed was that it was too early. Instagram had to come and change the world, and Instagram fundamentally, I mean, for better or worse, like before Instagram, the idea of taking a photo of your food or taking a photo of this place you visited and stuff was completely foreign to people. And like, so, Foursquare came, it buzzed a little bit, and then it failed because nobody wanted to do that shit. But now, like, we're in a post-Instagram, post-social world.
Yeah, I agree.
And all of, like, and current social media is all just turned into fucking clickbait slop anyway. So, like, can we take the original idea, make it obviously better, make it modern, and sort of do this travel, location independence, nomading, expat, community, health, wellness, longevity, kind of like wrap all of that into this new dynamic travel app. So that's the big idea. Whether I can execute it or not is going to be a big question. And, I told my wife, I said, this is my last big startup. I said, I'm going to like go balls to the wall on this, see if I can succeed. But yeah, man, I'll
Where is
pause
it at
there.
now in terms of development? Like, what stage are you guys at now?
Yeah, so we did I actually yesterday just published our first release notes. So we are still what I would consider an alpha or a beta. So we did a first like public release notes where I broke down like what's ready, what is not ready, and basically most of the things are not ready. I expect us to be somewhat live in the end of June. So I would expect a useful product by June. And then I would expect by towards the end of this year for us to be like a formidable product where I'm confident that we can tell somebody who's using Google or Instagram or TripAdvisor or anything to say, hey, check this out. It's going to blow you away. And like, it'll be magic. They'll sign up, they'll add their interest, they'll find their people and be like, you should go here. And they'll be like, holy shit, that is exactly the place I want to go to. That's the experience that I want to give them.
Definitely send it over. We'll link it when,
I appreciate it.
The thing with tech is it's so difficult to build because you can always improve it. So when you're happy with it and we can mention it, send it over, we'll mention it too.
I appreciate it, man. I appreciate it.
Okay, we have about 5 minutes left. Anything you'd like to go over or mention?
Look,
and we'll link everything here. We talked about books too, so
yeah, I mean, I talked about the book, I talked about the things. So, there's like, I've got a lot going on. I mean, I really appreciate the conversation. It's funny, I've been on like 500 podcasts, right? So, done the rounds, and a lot of the time I get on with hosts, and they sort of have their questions and this and that, but there's never like a real sort of connection with the host. And I think you and I had that today. Is like we've probably similar age. We've both built things, we've both written things, we've both been through the meat grinder, come out the other end with our scars and all that sort of stuff. So I appreciate you having me on and allowing me to go through all this stuff. I get excitable by the things that I'm working on because obviously
I get it.
I give a shit. So it's a good thing. So yeah, man, I guess my final words would be thank you for having me on.
It.
And
it was a pleasure. We'll definitely the team is listening, so sometimes the truth is you never know how a show will go. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's okay, as you've been on so many shows too. This one was great. I definitely want to have you back probably in like 3 months, just so we can talk. We haven't even really talked about Bitcoin in itself. Actually, maybe let's end with Bitcoin, where you see it going. But definitely have good vibes on this conversation. So I have 2 questions. Let's do Bitcoin first, and then the question that everyone wants to know is where does this cycle go? So first of all, Bitcoin, what's your view on? There's a lot of noise, good and bad, but mainly very good, right? Coming out of interest, big players finally being interested in Bitcoin. What's your take, being very early to Bitcoin, seeing it evolve? What's your take? Hot take, cold take, whatever you want. The floor is yours, basically. What do you think?
Yeah. So I'm obviously always more aligned with like sort of the cypherpunk early ethos of Bitcoin. I love that. I'm not a fan of, corporations and all these sort of guys buying it. But I recognize, and I love this quote, is like Bitcoin is money for enemies. And not only is it money for enemies, it's like the perfect money is something that somebody else cannot force someone to not use, right? So
Yep.
Bitcoin is entirely immune to that. There's no foundation or organization or central plan, or there's no one that can say, no, you can't have it. So to me, recognizing that and recognizing the fact that Bitcoin has to go from nothing, like literally the first bit of Bitcoin was worth 2 fucking pizzas for 10,000 Bitcoin. So people have to remember this. It's like it had to start from nothing and it has to become worth everything. So that pathway is inevitably going to progress through large corporations and all this sort of stuff buying it. It's just going to happen. The beauty of what Satoshi did was by releasing it hard and fast in the beginning, so the issuance cycle, it was able to be accumulated by individuals first.
Yeah.
And that was really good. And that's why it's spread as fairly as it could have been. There's people talk about like, oh, it's unfair distributed, all this sort of shit. Look, there's no such thing as equal distribution. You can't get equal distribution. It's fucking impossible unless you do it by fiat. And Bitcoin is supposedly not fiat. And there's no such thing as fair. It's like there are people that I have been telling for a decade now to buy Bitcoin. And no matter how much you tell them, they're not going to buy it. So it's like, what are you going to do? Like, slap them in the face and make them have Bitcoin? No, you can't. So it's like it's people get Bitcoin at the price they deserve. So fundamentally, my take is that I personally don't like it, but it is what it is, and everyone's going to have to buy Bitcoin at some point. Which leads me to the next question: is where does it go this cycle? I think each cycle there's something that helps Bitcoin pump, right? In 2017, it was ICOs and shitcoins. In 2021, it was I don't know, fucking DeFi and gambling and whatever the fuck else it was. Then the sort of the last cycle was like, I think it was like JPEGs and NFTs
Coinbase,
and everything like that.
NFTs,
Yep. This cycle's shitcoin and gambling is going to be MicroStrategy kind of like companies, like all of these companies putting Bitcoin on their treasury and balance sheets, and they're going to like lever themselves up. That is going to pump the hell out of Bitcoin. I don't believe we've had a bull run since 2017. I think,
this is
I don't believe,
this is gonna be interesting on the social.
I'm serious. I don't believe we've had a bull run since 2017. Like 2020, 2000, whatever it was, 2021, that was like a test run. Like the real bull run is when Bitcoin goes 5, 6, 7x. And I do believe we are gearing up for something stupid like that, where if Bitcoin pumps, it'll go crazy. I'm thinking like 500,000, something in that range in a very short period of time. And then my prediction, and mark this, save it as a video, whatever you have to do. My prediction is that there's going to be a bunch of overextension with these treasury companies. They're going to take risk. They're going to spread their balance sheet too thin, or whatever debt they get is going to like be spread too thin. And something's going to pop, and it's going to create a contagion, and a bunch of them are going to pop. It's going to blow them all up. It'll tank Bitcoin from like 500 or whatever, and Bitcoin will tank to like 200, 150. But I believe somewhere between 100 to 150, I believe that is the new base. We are forming the base right now. So when this thing pops, it's going to go there, and it'll come back to this base in the next year or 2 or 3. But that's my prediction. 500K this cycle or more, and we will come back to the base that we're forming now.
I think no one's going to be upset with that price forecast. You know what's interesting is, no, go ahead.
I was going to say it's going to come and go quick though. So if anyone is thinking of like, so I mean, I just buy and hold. I never trade anymore. But like if people are, I say that, but I say that like, it always sounds, before it happens, you're sort of viewing it forward and it sounds all so simple, but in the heat of the moment, it's not so simple. So like if you've got a price target or whatever, like set that in stone, because we don't know whether this is going to go to 480, 520. I don't fucking know, but I think it's going to boom.
What's interesting is I agree with you. There's been, people say we've been, and it's true, we've seen bullish price action for the last 18 months. but this is nowhere near euphoria. Like I don't think anyone understands, especially the first cyclers here, who think there was excitement because Trump launched a meme coin. There's been no euphoria. So, and we're at 100K quite easily. ETH at 2,500. I mean, there's been, again, no euphoria. We had a lot of institutional guests too who work on directly with funds and corporations and advise these corporations on the balance sheet side. So we're talking hundreds of potential companies who are looking at this
Yeah.
now. Hundreds. This is not 2020, right? Where MicroStrategy is just doing an event. Remember that event they did just to kind of lay out the plan? No, this is hundreds of C-level executives looking at this every week. Dozens. You see these headlines coming up. So I think I agree with you. We haven't seen any real euphoria at all over the last 18 months, anywhere close to what it can be, I think.
Yeah, it's going to go mental. It's going to go mental, but it's going to be short, sharp, and fast. Like, people have to be like, Bitcoin makes, I think it makes 90% of its gains in like, 10 or 11 trading days in the year. So like, it's that quick. Like, people are not ready for what's coming.
Yeah. Well, it's been great having you on the show. We will link
Absolutely,
up all
man.
your resources. Definitely want to have you back. And anything cool that you have after the show, any ideas or you want us to connect. We have a very unfortunately with crypto, I said this before the show. When we have bullish days, we have 3 to 4 times the audience. When we have a choppy day, it's like today. When we have bearish days, it's crickets, right? So it's one of the only industries that is so dependent on attendance, directly related to how much is it pumping today. So we should definitely do something if we see those huge price, those green candles between the 2, 3, 400K BTC. It's we should
Just
definitely
hit
have
me
you
up.
back on. For
Hit me
sure.
up
Yeah, we'll do it,
anytime.
man.
If that
Yeah,
happens,
yeah,
you got me on Telegram. I'll just jump on and let's we
yeah.
can rip it live.
Yep, let's do it. All right. No, it was great having you. Thank you everyone for being on the show. I think this was super good vibes today. I think everyone feels it. I can see like several DMs here as we were talking. And that's pretty much it. We'll post the summary. We'll have articles out and the clips, including the extremely bullish forecast, which I think everyone will be super happy to hear about. Thanks, Alex. It was great having you
Thank you,
on,
man.
and we will have you on next time.
I really appreciate it, man. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you got value from this episode, you're going to love what's coming next. So subscribe now. We drop new episodes and videos several times a week featuring power players, market movers, and insiders from the financial world. And if you want access to deals and insights we only share privately, hit the links in the description and we'll see you on the next show.